thank you all for being here tonight. The Red Shoes was gracious enough to kind of move some things around so we could use this space, which I'm really grateful for. It just fits that this would be the spot to do this. This is really your evening. I called this because tonight marks the 12th anniversary of when I started what became the trilogy. So I'm basically trying to close a loop with this, and curious to see what you all have to say about the books. I'm here to answer any questions that you have, if you happen to have any, but otherwise this is for you to share ideas and say whatever you need to say. And if you have a question that you don't really want to ask out loud, or you're trying to figure out how to phrase it, if you want to write it down and put it in the little baggie, we can pull it and do that. Otherwise, y'all just go at it and feel free to wander, get treats or whatever. There you go. And thank y'all for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Sure. It's really cool.
I've been really excited about it. I requested off from work and was like, I'm going. Because I work at a hospital, so you gotta like plan stuff ahead.
Yeah.
Ronlyn, did you say 12 years?
12.
And is 12 a significant number for you in a way?
12 is just symbolic of a cycle of completion. And it's just time to close the loop.
Has things been lingering for you creatively?
What do you mean?
Like when you finished the third and were published and everything, were you still being visited by notions or characters?
No.
No.
No. I mean, they're, like, I can kind of feel them stirring, like, right now.
Right.
But typically, no. But that's also just me, like, you just leave, it's time for you to leave me alone.
Right.
Pretty much.
Close that door.
Yeah.
So you said 12 years, but that's not the beginning of the story. Isn't that correct? Didn't the story have its roots in a school project from?
Yeah, and if
ago?
anybody's interested in reading the timeline of the history of how the trilogy happened, it's on my website. So, like, if you go to one of the books, you can click on the timeline. But yeah, I wrote a fairy tale as an undergrad, which then later I started turning into a novel once I left college. Worked on about 3 years, put it in a closet. First novel got published, Mercy of Thin Air, and I thought I knew what my second book was going to be, and it wouldn't take root, and I found this old project in the closet, and on October 23rd, 2006, whatever it had been was not what it was going to end up being.
So it was a complete remarking, or it was just...
In some respects, yes. In others, no. And I think well, I mean, the short story or the fairy tale really doesn't have much relationship to what the trilogy became. Some of the characters are the same. And the novel, I would say no. So if you're curious about reading fairy tale, that's also on that timeline. Okay. In a PDF.
With the final product, the end product, the trilogy, did it change a lot from 12 years ago?
I don't know how to answer that question.
The question I have is, when you started, I don't know, you were maybe going down this path. Did you continue that path, or did you go here?
There was no path.
Okay.
No. I'm just getting fed all of these images and pieces and dialogue and visuals and sound and smells, and no, it's a very chaotic opening process for me, and it has been for all of my books. Mixed in with getting pieces that didn't make any sense because it's just fragments. I was led to research certain topics, so it's not like, I had any specific intention of this is what I want to write. I don't choose. You've heard me say this before. I don't choose my novels; they choose me. So I'm basically just collecting information and try to make sense of everything, and that typically takes years to do.
So the intention took hold at some point, or no? How would you describe it in terms of having intention as part of your writing and thinking?
At some point, I have a sense of what the book wants to be, so it's not about imposing my will over what the story is. I'm simply, whatever it is, I'm constellating in a form that people can read and making the connections among all of these pieces, and sometimes I'm having to fill in with my imagination more or less, or actual facts if that is required, and other times it's just simply putting the pieces together of all of these bits that come to me. So it's a more intuitive process. I give it shape. There's the art and the craft. So the art is what's coming in, and then the craft is me figuring out how to make it into a book that other people can read.
So when you say you were led to it, what do you mean?
My creative process tends to be one of receiving rather than imagining. And so if one is not comfortable with the non-ordinary, that sounds, well, frankly insane, but I don't experience writing typically, or not with my novels, as something that I want to write about this and I'm making this up and I'm deciding these things about these characters. It's a matter of me getting to know the story and the people or entities of that story, and then it becomes a book. I mean, it's like being a conduit.
I got it. So I have 80 billion questions about your research process.
Okay.
But before we go to research, when you were devising the connections, the threads that connect the three, did you have to get a map out? Because at one point I had paper stuck on my wall, figuring things out. You know, like deconstructing what you constructed to see how you did it, and it floored me.
I'm pausing because it's hard to explain what it's like when I get into a really deep space with a work, because even though I do keep really good notes and I do have a plot map, I keep a lot in my head. And so most of the time I have some awareness of how these pieces connect. And if I don't, I'll figure something will come later. So there's little tiny details that some readers might catch and others might not, that I didn't plan. It just sort of popped up and I was like, oh, so that relates to that. So sometimes it's me and sometimes it's not.
Right.
You know, sometimes it's in the writing and I have to make the pieces fit because I understand intuitively how they do fit, but I have to point the reader to that. But most of the time
was the color blue a way of doing that, of pointing the reader towards the connections?
That was organic to the book. I mean, that wasn't me saying the color blue is significant. That was the story saying the color blue is significant. Follow this.
So here's something that I wonder, kind of along that same line. In my mind, during reading the book, and especially after reading the book, I was envisioning you having multiple, writing, trampolines almost. Also because it's me projecting, that's the way I work. A little bit over here, and then a little bit over here, as far as, the timeline of the book goes. So I guess my question is more about were the books kind of separately encapsulated, or while you were writing all three and then you just got the first one done and then finished up the other two? Does that make how does that part work for you?
Okay, so when I went back to look through my notebook, and this was about a year or two ago, to see what happened, the first, I'd say 6 to 12 months of working on this project, I had every major piece of the trilogy. I didn't think I was writing a trilogy.
Okay.
I didn't want to write a trilogy, quite frankly. So it was all there, and I thought I was just going to write one epic novel.
Okay.
And then in 2009, once I got the download from Aoife, hi, please welcome, join us.
Yeah.
When I got the download from Aoife, and I thought these were just going to be notes that I would use to make a small piece in a book that was just going to be big.
Yeah.
And then eventually I realized, oh no, it's in fact its own book. I was then left with a prequel and a sequel.
Okay.
And then once I was writing The Chronicle of Secret Ribbon, and it was 240,000 words, and my editor got it, and she said, can we split it up into 3? And I'm like, okay, fine, which is what I did. So it was that.
Okay. So it was kind of a singular
Yes.
entity that then had to get siphoned off like into 3 bubbles. That's how I felt about it, and that like the bulk of it, kind of the second book into the third book, was kind of the major like belly of the mussel, and then like the 2 ends that kind of anchor it in time. So yeah, that's what I was really, that was been my big wonder, was like how this got worked on and then became 3 separate entities.
Yep.
So,
Go ahead.
why did Aoife wanted it out?
Wanted her own book.
Yeah.
She had something to tell that was going to take far more than 7,500 words. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. It's like she had, I mean, the Mapmaker's War, it just has such a specific tone to it. There's a certain gravitas to it. Her voice, there's something very ancient about her voice. And what she had to say needed its own book, because a lot of what's in that particular text could not have been, it wouldn't have had the same significance or weight if it would have been a smaller piece in a bigger book.
Was there a reason of the times? Because I took your book and I took everything and brought it today, and it just fit like a Lego with what's going on today.
Oh, that, yeah. Yeah, well, the prescience in my part is really not mine, it's theirs. So when I say I'm a conduit, that's what I mean.
Okay.
When I was working on what became the Mapmaker's War in 2010, 2011, it was not on my radar what things were going to become. But clearly something else was in tune with what many of us missed.
Ronlyn, I know you read certain select pieces of literature while you were working, and that you acknowledged some of the writers in Mapmaker's War. Did that was that something you received too? Or did, like, I like that word Tina just used, anchor. Did reading other books that you acknowledged as influential feel like an anchor in a way, or were you simply receiving those suggestions?
That was a lot of, okay, what am I supposed to be researching now, and going to the library with the intent of reading a particular book, and I end up moving to a different shelf and pulling this off, or literally hearing a voice sometimes say, get that one.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so that answers one of my questions about research. like, okay, the societies you build, the utopian especially society that you built in the first one. I think I've heard you speak before that it was based on similar models that you researched from history.
Neolithic communities.
And like, how did you even know where to go, what to look up, that sort of thing?
Light told me to.
So cool. Send me some of that.
You know, I wish I had a more rational answer for that, but that's really the truth. It was, go read that. Why? You'll see. Okay. And then I understood why.
Yeah, I have to say that opened my eyes to history again. Like, you always know history is the victor's tale, and so the history we learn in our textbooks is not true history.
Right.
It's someone's story. And, yet again, going and researching a little bit on my own, just on the side, because I'm like, this is fascinating. And I know you talked about the Neolithic villages before, and going to look at that and seeing that our context, we have so much bias in our context about how anthropological things are interpreted, that if you remove that bias, then it tells a completely different story. and that I was just blown away by that.
Right. Yeah,
Like
I
that
do
just-
love that piece where when they're, the histories that they get told as kids, just kind of this person just was barely there and assumes to be male, but also just barely in existence at all. And then here's this whole person who really was a big deal.
Right.
And then they find out, they find that from the other side of it. And yeah, you can't help but wonder, like, how many stories, how many other stories are out there like that, where the way that we're pointed at it, it looks like this, but if you look at it from the other side, there's these people and situations that helped create that situation. Like, it's always cool to look at what was happening with the populace before certain people got elected. To see, like, what was going on. It helps you understand something like Hitler when you look at what had been going on, like, the 10, 15 years before that really ramped up. So, and we don't get told those things.
Right.
So, yeah, it's really nice that that's such an, not central, I guess, but that's such a strong realization that's very clear. You don't have to pick it apart. It's just like in your face. Like, this happened. This person got erased. Almost. Yeah.
I mean, it makes you reassess so much, and it's fun. It turns everything back into kind of a questioning fun, looking for clues fun.
It turns your wonder back
Exactly.
up. Oh, yeah. We don't know everything, and everything that's told to us is not the absolute. Yeah.
And I found, especially like when I reread them all, when the third book came out, you get a lot more of those connections. And it was really cool.
Yeah, totally. I reread them just recently in preparation for this, and I went through the same thing I always do. I read Matt Maker's War, and I was like, that's my favorite. That's my apple. I changed my mind. It's not the Plague Diaries. It's Aoife. She's my hero. I love her. That's my new favorite. And then I read Chronicles of Secret, and it is imbued with that magic of childhood that is just, you can't put your finger on, like the magic of childhood where you put a towel on and you're a superhero, or you get a pair of white boots, hand-me-downs, and you just know they're special and they make you feel powerful when you put them on. That kind of, I don't even know what that word is, but that is what Secret is to me. That book is to me. And so I read the second one, I'm like, no, this one's my favorite. She just tapped into something just so universal with this one. I just love it, and it has that ambiance of a fairy tale, and then I read the Plague Diaries and I'm crying. I'm like, no, this was so important. This was so important. This one has to be my favorite. Right. And so it just depends on which one I'm reading, kind of thing. Because you tapped into something. I don't know what it is, and trust me, I'm going to keep rereading them until I figure out what it is. But you tapped into something that I think is a universal human experience.
Yeah, and the journal entries in the Plague Diaries are just so fantastic and so real. These little snippets of the other side of this story that, I'm like, God, we should do that with every single important event. I wish we had journal entries for every, everybody knows, like, where people were when JFK got shot, kind of thing, but there's so many other really important circumstances that we've all gone through, but everybody's got their own totally randomly, amazingly different take on it. What was going on with them, for them, what did it mean to them, how did it impact them, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it was such good, like, reporting. Felt like really good reporting. And I was thinking about those interviews happening. It felt so very real. Like, I could just see two people sitting in a room and being like, okay, don't talk about anything that you don't want to, but can you tell me how this was for you? and how, you know, they're looking back on it too. So it's even more like calm and realistic. If they would have been interviewed that day, it would have been an amazing, you know, like, I'm 9 years old, this is fucked, I don't know what's going on, you know, but they're like, I was 9 years old and it looked like this. And so it feels very rational and calm and like thought out responses instead of like at the moment of panic and plague and everything.
It was funny. It reminded me a little bit of the chronicles that they recorded. I think it's the Shoah organization or something like that. I can't remember the name of it. But you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And they recorded the oral stories of the Holocaust survivors. And that's what, when I, especially the second time I read it, that's what kept coming up in my brain was the video I had watched of that. And just, you know, it just gave me chills. I mean, it just, every time I read it, it gives me chills because it feels like, yeah, when you're a witness to history, and you know you're a witness to history, but your history goes unspoken, you know.
Yeah.
You have 3 books, and I know it was a kind of continuum, although I guess you could argue it's 2 stories, and one story split into 2, but it's 3 books, and one of them is in first person, one's in third person, and another one is in this first person, third person hybrid that Aoife uses. Again, was that a conscious Ronlyn decision, or was that the voices that lived in Ronlyn's head that was giving, and I don't mean that in a bad way, it's just I don't understand what you're saying. So I mean, I guess what I'm wondering is, where did that come from? It totally worked for me, but I just didn't know, you know, where that came from.
Aoife very clearly said that her story would be told from second person.
Okay.
There's like a paragraph in the handwritten text that I still have, which is something about, it will only take a day of your world's magic to change this. And what she meant was, even if the word I was appearing on the page, that it was supposed to be you.
Okay.
It really did just take a day of our world's magic, thanks to Microsoft Word, find and replace. You know, it was just that easy. But no, she was very clear about it, and I know that a lot of readers have a difficult time with the first book being in second person because it is an unusual point of view, but it couldn't be anything else. Like, it just, I don't think it would have the same power to it if it were I. There's just something would have been missing. And so in terms of the other 2 books being in a different point of view, third seemed like the natural voice for the Chronicle of Secret Riven, even though I was very aware that Secret was using it as a distancing device to keep it from herself.
Well, and then also, when she's 3 or 4 and not even speaking yet or anything, it seems appropriate to have that part narrated.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
Until she reaches a certain age, and then she's able to speak for herself.
Yeah. The whole text, which I thought would be the Chronicle of Secret Riven, Volume 1, Volume 2, one book, when it got split in half, I thought, no problem, I'll just split the book in half, it'll be also in third person, and I'll just go forward and, you know, polish this up here and there. The minute it got split in half, it was like, nope, it has to be first person, and I have to write another 25,000 words. And this is true. I mean, I think this is true for any work of fiction that I work on, for sure. The characters tell you the voice, the characters tell you the point of view. Other writers pick it, I want to write first, I want to write third, that's fine. But in this case, it was very organic and very clear which one, how it needed to be.
Because yes, with the first one, it was a little confusing at first. After 3 or 4 pages, it was not. It was natural. That's just, you know, once I trained my brain, and it only took 2 or 3 pages, and then okay, that's what she's saying. So.
I'm curious as to anybody belong to a book club that did her books, discussed her books through the years. You all
Well, a long time ago, like I don't even want to say how many years ago. I was in a book club that did Mercy of Thin Air.
Yeah.
That
Well,
was
Mercy's 13 years old, so.
Yeah, so that one. So you were in a book club that discussed that one.
yeah.
But not the trilogy.
Mm-mm.
Or any parts of the trilogy. Anybody?
My wife was in a book club that did at least the first.
They did map makers.
They did the first one. I don't know if they did the second one. She kind of got out of it by then, probably anyway.
So I was in a book club, that daytime book club for Paula Hoffman's house. that you came-
yeah.
You came to that one perhaps first. And then the one that is my neighborhood book club that you came to perhaps second. And the acceptance and confusion were about balanced in the groups because we're older. And getting some of these older ladies to read fantasy was a challenge. And so, even though some of us were like so excited, because it was something that, like you said earlier, sent us back to childhood. It was, oh my goodness, I didn't get to read some of this kind of thing when I was, younger or growing up to this extent, this kind of fantasy, a female fantasy, that I think we lacked, my generation lacked. And I think that was why there were those of us in both book clubs that were drawn to this. And thank you. And the reason I asked is because I wanted to hear what other people's take was on that discussion, because I couldn't go to the second. The generational said, yeah, we don't think so, So they didn't do the second. So of course I bought the second, listened to you here, listened to you at the gallery, and I was so excited to do it, and then life took an interruption with grandbabies, and I didn't get to read the second until I knew I was coming to do this.
Oh.
So I was so grateful that you gave us a couple of lag time months. So then I did second, third together. And that was so exciting.
Jealous because I was waiting for that third book.
Yeah, no.
And this one over here was teasing me like, it's so good. I'm like, I hate you right now.
I got a little previews, little tiny previews.
I was so mad. I was so mad because I could not wait for the third book. And then she's like, oh, it's great.
Oh, I tortured her. I absolutely
Completely.
tortured her.
Completely. She's so mean.
I didn't look at it as fantasy at all. From the beginning, it was a reality to me. And then the other aspect of it is I work with young children, and I'm always in search of how to explain certain things that are happening with our children. And so
How old are the children you work with?
3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
Wow.
And with the latest research, I know that everything that we learn, we pass it through our DNA to our children. So I was always looking at it from that perspective, and it was a reality that had happened that did not get written in the time, like the oral histories that never got written up. And I look at it always as a spiral. History is a spiral of things. The same mistakes, we do it over and over and over. I think that's the humanity's demise. So I always looked at it congruent to what's happening today. It was just awesome because here's my colleague, and I would just go in and say, oh, did you see that? So it was like current events that are happening. And I'm also, I guess I can say that I'm a light worker too. And so I'm familiar with the other world. So it wasn't, I know a lot of people have a hard time accepting the other world, but it's our realities, and when we come, we actually know all about it, but then people change it for us. And then we forget the other worlds. And I know currently there are a lot of secrets, and those secrets are going to come out soon, I've been told. So I was looking at it, all the secrets, things that are happening. They're happening currently. The plagues are happening in a different way. We have lots of diseases. We have environmental stuff going on. So I was kind of like going along with today when I read all of them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the aspect of the plague where hurts and like wrongdoings, kind of, things that reverberate with you that you've done to other people or that have been done to you, manifesting in a physical way. I mean, I've been in body work and healing for like 13 years. That shit is absolutely without a doubt true. It's just fucking true. And so reading about it as a plague like that and it happening to everyone, whether you like it or not, I mean, the longer I go in, being in that position as a massage therapist and a yoga instructor, and I work with kids too with pottery, and I work with adults with pottery, all of those things bring out your hurts and your repetitive motion syndromes, and the one that I tell people probably the most often, I mean, there's like a top 5, but one of the things I tell people the most often is that there's plenty of reason to want to pull your heart away from the world, and if you let yourself do that for long enough, it affects your posture and it affects your spine. And I feel like a lot of the people that went through the depression, there's that whole generation, and there were dietary things involved too, but there's a whole generation of people who have that, kyphosis, that big hump, and it is bone and biology and diet, but there's so much reason to get as far away from it as you can with your body. Like the world is out here and I'm just going to get as far away from it as I can. So I mean, I've even put my hand on people's chests and said, push into my hand. It's okay to lead with your heart. And immediately both of us are sobbing because it's just so painfully, like emotionally explosively real and true, this real true thing that everybody does. And so the whole plague scenario was so real for me. And I mean, I read them, I waited because I have no patience for like what y'all went through. Zero. It's been way too long. Like, I'm a Dune fan, and I get to read all those in like this huge binge succession and with the Netflix and all that stuff, so I have no tolerance. So I waited until they all 3 were out, and then like gobbled all 3 of them up. So I went through all of that, like, this is my favorite, this is amazing, and then the second one, this is so amazing, and then the third one was like, just completely out to lunch with it and just so enamored with it, and it was like 3 or 4 months, it's like since Christmas, and then I passed them around, and then when they all 3 came back to me, then I was like power reading, like getting ready for this, and yeah, Plague Diaries, definitely. I was just like, I'm in this. This is kind of my life. A lot of the time, I'm dealing with these, people that had things happen when they were children that are 40s, 50s, 60s, because I work with a lot of older women. Like, this place is my jam. So a lot of my people come from here, and they are still holding their belly buttons or holding their sphincters or pulling their heart away from the world from something that happened fucking 40 years ago. Totally true. So that part of this trilogy was just so real for me, and I didn't feel like it was another world at all. That is my world. Totally true. It didn't feel like a fantasy at all. So that's what, when I am, politely shoving it on people, like, you gotta read this now. I mean, whenever you want to, whatever. I'm saying, that it is this very powerful stuff that would be too abrasive and too real if it was in a solid concrete
Yes.
delivery.
It'd be too painful to read.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need that little minute distance.
I mean, I love like my generation has done with animation. You know, like some things have gotten tackled in The Simpsons and Family Guy that and the Flintstones for that matter that could not be real people. Couldn't do those things to real people or real animals for that matter. But since it's animated, you get to just go for it. And in this genre and like cushion, all of these things are coming across that are amazing to take in, and it's like spoonful of sugar with that cushion genre of like fantasy, or it would be too hard.
Right, because it makes you feel protected to have that layer.
Yeah,
there, that fantastical layer.
This is a magical place. Where
this is a story. This is a narrative. This is, you know, just a little.
So beautifully.
It's flimsy, but it's there. It's enough to make you feel protected, and still touched, and still like.
For sure.
I'm on this page. How did she know I'm on this page? You know, that kind of.
I mean, the books meant a lot to me, and she'll attest. Like when I finished the third one, I sent her like a pair, like pages of like text just about how, you know, my thoughts and everything. But I don't really think I realized how much it meant to me until this book discussion came up, and I was like, it's probably the reason I became vegetarian. And this, you know, it's just. The kind of impact it had, I didn't really quite realize.
And you start looking back, and you're like, "Oh, yeah. That is why I started doing that, or that is why I started thinking that, or that is why I started questioning that." So, yeah, it's one of those that gets under your skin,
for sure,
and just kind
that's
of
one of the big
evolves.
reasons I wanted to come. Is just so you could know like the impact you had.
Thank you.
Just the way you look at things and everything, too.
The narrator, the town crier. What is that?
The town sections?
Yeah. I call them the town crier because that's what they are to me. Like, where they, you know.
Okay, what do you
speaker box
what do y'all
things.
think about it? Because
I was so confused because at first I thought it was like a technology, like a speaker, and it was like a person in a box, and I was just like, what? Okay. It was definitely odd.
are you talking about the people on the streets, or are you talking about the structure of the town sections in the Chronicle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Because it felt like to me, she made, and this could just be my experience, she made the town a character, and the town was talking. That's what it felt like. Like, I always had like a picture of a town crier, you know, ringing a bell and saying these things, like trying to wake up its citizens, you know, trying to get the people who were moving around the streets to see what Secret was seeing.
I don't understand what you're talking about.
So when it says follow the children into their dreams, and this is what's happening in their houses when they're going to sleep and all of that.
Right. Okay.
I mean, I guess I had like a personification of it too, but for me it was more like the breeze that goes through the town, like the spirit of the town.
Yeah,
I
the
guess.
subconscious.
Yeah.
I'm looking for one.
Yeah, those were almost as like arresting and powerful as the first person in the first book, and as those journal entries of the
so
play.
like, as the day ends, contend with the noise, the traffic, the news boxes. People vanish behind their doors. Many come out again to slip into places that were active but less conspicuous during the day. I mean, this isn't Secret. You know, this isn't Secret, and it's not a narrator who's narrating Secret's story. It's almost like something separate but connected. And I had never seen that or experienced that before in a book that I can remember, at least.
Yeah,
done so effectively.
Right.
I mean, if you have traveled into many different places, every place that you go to has a character. And when you look at their character, you can see these things talking to you. So, besides the people, everything has a character. Everything is living, whether they are, you know, all the plants are actually talking to each other. So it is making it come alive and letting us know that they actually talk within each other and they see what is going on as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then they know what's happening to the people, our homes, our workplaces. They know our hurts and happiness and what goes on beyond closed doors.
So do you feel like that those they're always like just 1 or 2 pages of description that was the town speaking, that was the place, because that was the feeling I got.
Yeah, that's what I felt too. Like it was like the spirit of the place. Also, kind of gave me that, arrested, like caught kind of feeling. Like you that's reading this, come here and look at this thing that I haven't shown you yet. You know, like a couple of those, I was like, fuck, it's talking to me. You know, I mean, something similar. It gave me the feeling that I was assuming Secret got, the first and second time, like the squirrel came to get her. Like that feeling, like this squirrel is wanting me to follow it. Can anyone else see it? Looks like no. Situation, circumstances are fine for me to just sneak off with this squirrel, and you feel like you're doing something wrong, or like, that you're going to get in trouble. That feeling that you have a lot when you're a kid. Like,
It almost felt to me...
Probably shouldn't do this, but gonna do it.
It almost felt to me like breaking that fourth wall. Like when we were little and we would watch Peter Pan, and you know how the part and the live Peter Pan play, they talk to the audience and they say, clap if you want Tinkerbell to live. That's what it felt like to me. Like, who is this person talking to me?
Behind the curtain or something.
Right.
Yeah, talking to you, and you're like,
wait, how do you even know I'm here? You felt caught suddenly.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You get that sensation, like, someone's talking to me. But also, to kind of back up what you were saying, I was on an island off the coast of Honduras, and I'm not like this huge world traveler or anything. I have just begun to step way out like that. And there was like a spirit of that place too, that very simply like followed the sun and the moon. Like in the day, in the morning, everyone was like in town, in the middle of town, like hustle bustle, getting their food and all that stuff. And then there was like a quiet time where everyone was home, and then everybody would go out on the water at night for the moon. And I could just sense the movement of that throughout the day. And being there for a week, like day 3, you're like, oh, this is okay, I got this. In the middle of town in the day, at your home in the evening, and then out on the water at night. And just that movement of how people move in a place definitely felt like that. Like the breeze or the shifting of the day, or whatever it is that makes people move, how they move and where they move. It felt very, very natural. Like I did not think about it as much when I was reading it, because I was so arrested by that sensation of being caught or picked out or something. But now that I'm thinking of it, it does just kind of seem like the spirit of the place being like, psst, come here, look over here.
And we always look for the things that we have lost. The places of the town that people went and enjoyed, like the coffee call, like that building. I can't go to this new coffee call. Every time
new
I
coffee
go
call,
there,
and it's like 7 years old or something. Right? I love that.
I was out of town in between,
Right.
and
You came back and you're like, what's this new thing?
And I still envisioned the place, how beautiful it was, and the galleries, the beautiful things, and it was a thing to go in there. Not for the coffee, but you went in to look at the beautiful stuff.
Now there's a drive-through.
And and then we always and the town also probably misses that too, and it didn't want to change.
Right. I've lived in 2 places that are now gone here.
And it's all man's greed. Man's greed makes all of these changes. And we don't always agree with man's greed, but we can't always stop it. We don't have the power to stop it, But if we all come together, then we can stop it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the connection to Old Wheel, I think, is what it was. And it's funny because, you know, she'll talk about it, like, because she has no idea why it's called that.
Right.
And you're just like, I know.
Me, I know the answer. Yeah. And there's so many places like that everywhere you go. I mean, how many other words? I love people that know the, what's the word, etymology.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the history of words or phrases.
Yeah, like, pardon my French.
And like rule of thumb. Like weird phrases that you just don't think about. You say them so often, you don't think about what they used to mean and why they came about. Like arm and a leg. Like if something would cost you an arm and a leg. I just found that one out like last year. That in a painting, they charged you for limbs because hands are hard. So a lot of old paintings, their hands are tucked in or their hands are in their pockets or behind them. And if you were really ballin', you had both arms. It would cost you an arm and a leg. Like an arm and a leg cost you extra to get yourself painted. I was like, no way! Oh, I always wondered what that was about. So, yeah, I love that. And so, yeah, Old Wheel, everybody in the town at that point is just like, yeah, that's just what it's called. Old Wheel. Like, all one word probably in their mind's eye. Mm-hmm. Old Wheel. But, like, no, there was this wheel here. There's this thing here.
But
I love that.
But it's still a place where, like, children go and do things. And so it still has that connection to the past.
So
it's
that
not just a
energy
name, yeah.
As a gathering place.
Yeah.
So, are you going to tell us your feeling about the
original question.
Oh, the town sections? Okay, so those came as a download, which meant I sat down for 2 days and wrote every word.
Oh, wow. Well, how did you figure out where they went?
That's just part of the process. It's like, that's what I mean. It's like I get pieces and I don't understand why I have them. And then at some point it becomes absolutely clear why I have them and where they belong.
Wow.
I have never bothered to dissect.
That process.
Well, there has to be.
Yeah.
But to fight it doesn't work. I mean,
Right.
things like the fact that Zaved is blind.
Right.
I mean, I remember arguing with whatever that is. No, she can't be blind. This doesn't make any sense. And I'm just saying, no, it's okay. You'll figure it out.
Uh-huh.
You don't need to know
everybody else
now.
will figure it out along with you as they're reading
I was
it
like,
when it's done, yeah.
Okay.
I love the bomb that dropped when you realized why she killed herself. And it was just, it felt like a bomb drop because you're just like, oh my god. Side note, completely different topic. I love the texture of the pages.
Me too.
Oh my
I
god.
love the edges. I love the edges.
And the
I got them all at the
smell
same
and the
time.
texture and
From Cottonwood Books, too.
Thank you.
So I had, like, the full experience of going into Cottonwood Books. He was
every-
calling me as he was getting them, and I was like, I don't even want to come get them until they're all... Like, I had a weird obsession, like, with them all three being together. I'm not coming to pick them up one at a time. I want them all together. I'm taking them home all together. Yeah, it was weird. But I just felt like... I had no idea why, but I was just really, you know, these have to come together. I need to absorb this whole thing all at the same time. And then when I finally did get them and could sit down and do it, it was such an important time for me to just sit down and do it. Like, we had just done this big move and had been like nonstop movement and decision making and all this stuff for such a, like, months, that I finally had the time to sit down and really absorb it all together. And so many things were happening while I was going through the book. Like, I was going through things as I was going through the book and it was all at the right place at the right time. So that trust, there's just no, I mean, it almost is like transcending trust at this time for me too. Like, it just is. It's not a thing that I waste any time really, like, arguing with or trying to, pick apart. So.
Did anybody else reread them? Like, read them once and then reread them?
I want to reread them.
Last two,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because I had the experience of reading them one at a time with
Right.
long periods of time in between.
And
Hard.
then reread them all together.
And
Yeah,
then
I
rereading
did
them
that
all
too.
together, it was
Yeah.
a completely different
I did that
experience.
too.
I'm
Oh, yeah,
sure.
that's
Completely different
I'm
experience.
sure. Yeah, I
That's what
can't
I mentioned
imagine.
earlier.
And what's
The
really
connections,
right,
like-
what's really interesting is Aoife's story particularly resonated even harder, even though when I first read her story, it felt like a completely separate story from Secrets, and I knew
Right.
eventually that would all be revealed and connected, but it just had a completely different vibe. And when you read them all together, like, her impact was even greater.
Yeah.
And I didn't anticipate that
How so?
she and I don't know if it's because, like, my life is so different from the first time I read her, but she spoke to me. Like, I felt like we were sisters. Like, we were just connected soul to soul, and I did not get that with the first reading, and so I don't know, I couldn't put my finger on why was it once I knew Secret Story and the Plague Diary story that her story became even more powerful.
I'm excited
'cause you
to
had
do
deeper-
that.
you
I'm
had-
really excited to do that.
You had deeper
now that I'm done.
connections because you had the feelings from the other two books. So
Right.
when you reread that first one, it's so deeply connected to everything else you've read.
Right. Like, I didn't cry the first time I read it. The second time I sobbed.
Yeah.
But at the end,
And it would be so funny almost to read it in that, almost along that same timeline, like reading 2 and 3 while getting these snippets of her story as it's kind of rolling out for them in the second and third book, like having it roll out for you again in that same way, like in little pieces.
Because they were so far apart for me, like, there's a lot of connections you just don't remember and don't
Right.
realize. And then when I reread them all again together, it was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It felt much deeper, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. Much more powerful.
One of the things Ronlyn has said is that they can be read in any order.
Yeah.
So, did anybody here read all three but read them out of order? I'm just wondering what.
Right.
My sister
I-
did.
Well, now I'm going to, just because I kind of want to know if that changes the
I was just wondering
experience.
how that would be. I mean, it flowed reading them in order, and
But if I feel like second, third, first would be
Then
better
that
than
makers.
than third,
3, 2,
second.
1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because 3, 2, 1, I feel like would be a little
Well,
disjarring.
yeah, I do
but
feel like 2 and 3.
2, 3, and then 1, I feel like would be very interesting.
Or just reading map makers on either end to anchor that. Again, just using that, like,
Yeah.
coming back around.
Like she said, we're old friends.
We've known each other since we were 11.
Oh, wow.
I've listened to her, like, and her process and, like, the evolution of the book and all this, like, as she was writing it. But so it was supposed to be one big epic, but then it got split. And then, but what would it have looked like if it were one? Like, would it, how would Aoife's story been integrated with the other two stories, or would the three of them, like, would there have been like a juxtaposition? Like, would it have
Would
like
it be dispersed?
Yeah, that would be really cool.
would Aoife's story have rolled out little bit by little bit, or would it have been stuck in the middle somewhere, or?
Well, when I went back and looked at the old plot maps, because I was preparing for some kind of presentation I was doing, so I actually took out the archives and was going through to see what actually happened. In a very early plot map, the way everything was structured was a big book with what I was calling ancillary narratives sprinkled in. Mm-hmm. So there were going to be the myths of the four, but it was going to be an ancillary narrative tucked here or wherever it was. So was Aoife's. So originally, and this was because I just didn't know it. I didn't know that much. I just thought it was going to have some sort of resonance, maybe similar to the way the town sections did. Mm-hmm. But it was intended to be like a short story, wedged within the whole thing. So it's sort of a gestalt experience that, in the way I thought it was going to turn out, once you read everything, all the pieces fit together. Mm-hmm. But at first glance, it wouldn't have made much sense. But that obviously went completely out of the window.
Yeah, it's like Lord of the Rings wasn't originally a trilogy. It was one book. Things just kind of...
Yeah, as much as I might have wanted to contain Aoife's, she was not having it, so...
Was it her decision as much as...
Oh, it's her decision. No, that was... Oh, no. My publisher didn't get involved until... What happened? I finished Mapmakers. I was 2/3 of the way through what I thought was going to become the Chronicle of Secret Riven, and that's when I got the 2-book deal. My publisher thought they were signing on to 2 books. Surprise! That's just not how it turned out. But trying to make Chronicles Secret Riven into a shorter book, I don't know, it probably would have taken me as much time, because I was 2 years late with Plague, because that was the one that was the hardest to write of all 3.
Because of the content, or because of the...
Secret was really difficult. No, Secret was a really difficult character to work with. Like, she and I still don't have a really good relationship. There's a lot of dissonance.
The nature of her is that way.
Yeah. So there was always a lot of dissonance, and then there was just things I didn't know or couldn't figure out, or things waiting to show up and all of that kind of stuff. And then the content was just really difficult. And then dealing with her mother, who, once everything was finished, I realized as difficult as she was, I thought she was incredibly protective of me in a way that a lot of the other characters were not, which was surprising. Because the only thing I ever heard her say directly to me was what she says in the Chronicle of Secret Riven, when she talks about being sent to one of the foster homes and the salt in her mouth. Yeah. That is the only thing she ever said directly to me. Everything else was just sort of this hazy piecing together of what was happening. And then the Plague itself, I knew probably, I'd have to go back and look, but I think I knew within the first week that there was going to be a Plague. I just didn't know what the Plague was going to be. And then as I started getting pieces of it, it wasn't until a later iteration of that last book where they physically manifested the trauma. And then it was I have to see this.
Right.
So having to carry that was really difficult. It's even hard for me to just sort of talk about it, because I carry a trauma from writing these books.
Wow.
Which is extremely difficult to manage sometimes.
Right. I think the carrying of trauma was something that everyone can relate to, which made it so much more deeply connected to me.
Yeah. And that's coming out.
Yeah.
That closet is opening, that darkness is getting interspersed with light now.
Yeah. Like the whole Me Too movement and, the Kavanaugh, all that stuff brought up a lot for me that I hadn't realized was still there. So I kind of really connected to that, especially recently.
Yeah. And going all 3 books, powerhousing through all 3, just back to back, no breaks, no bullshit, nothing, barely anything in between. I mean, not very often have I honestly been racing home and getting through all my stuff and getting done with everything so that I can sit down and read this. It's hilarious. So, because all that stuff is so true. It's just so, the way that darkness gets broken up by acknowledging it and, airing it out and really going all the way through it. There's nothing that's going to heal because we're keeping it down. Nothing's going to heal.
And also,
that way.
her denial of
way.
herself and her, in a way, I don't know what you would call it, powers or whatever, but her denial of them.
Oh, God, so strong. And everybody wants to do that at one point or another. Yeah. I don't want to be weird. I don't want to do these things. Whatever it is that you don't want to do. That was so...
Just that
so
embrace...
right.
when she did finally embrace herself. It's really cool. Because I think everyone, has, to some degree, something they've tried not to be at one point.
So how did Fumini feed into that?
Oh, God. Silver platter. Here's this big place where you don't have to deal with any of this. You can just be away from
pretend
it all,
everything's
and
perfect.
have these parties, and I'll send the carriage for you. Yeah, so fantastic, so easy.
Just forget that it's our life, that it's not other people's lives. But it seems like everything is about what the other people will think. And it's not about that.
Right.
And I mean, I kind of see that in the children. A lot of people raise their children according to that. And what they have is all materialistic, not necessarily spiritual. You know, what are you going to get me? Material. And
I'm not at home, sweetheart.
that's another part of humanity that doesn't seem to change much. And I'm currently reading a book called Homo sapiens, and in there it talks about how people came out to be speaking languages, and it says that it is all because of gossip. Once they started gathering together, it wasn't about
Passing down of wisdom and knowledge. They're like, did you see what she was wearing? Oh my god, yeah. I mean, the internet started because of pornography too, so.
Yeah, I mean, the evolution of language is definitely fascinating.
Yeah.
I have a question which kind of like bothered me all this time. When she had the kids and she had to go back to her parents' house, and then she decided to go back out again, why her parents did not acknowledge their roots of blues?
Do you mean Aoife?
Yeah.
They had no knowledge.
How come?
It was lost.
It was lost.
It was lost. I mean, the hint going in Mapmaker's War is when Light is holding Y and he says, "What do you know of your mother's mother?" And Aoife says something to the effect of, she was strange and she was gone a lot. She died young. And that was basically the hint. Aoife's grandmother was a voice, but it had been suppressed. And so that was hidden. I mean, that was part of that family's legacy, that was denied. And it wasn't until Aoife was in a place where they could recognize who Y was, because Y would have had the same fate, much the same as Zavet did. Yeah. Zavet was a voice, but she was not in a time or a place where those gifts could be acknowledged. Does that answer the question?
Yes, like today.
I just wrote down when I was reading the second book, it sounded beautiful to me, and the rush of spring, the pulse of summer, the thrum of autumn, and winter awaiting stillness. That just was so beautiful to me, the way you described that.
I don't even remember those.
Well, it just sounded beautiful on the page, and I just wanted to make sure I remembered it. So
that would have been at some point secret, just sort of doing that.
But it was. I just wanted to let you know that was beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, I have to remember my question.
Okay.
So on my second reading, I didn't pick this up. I mean, on my first reading, I didn't pick this up. I picked it up on my second reading. The theme of reluctant mothering, reluctant nurturing. From generation to generation to generation.
Yeah.
I was wondering if that was important and intentional to you, or if that was yet another thing that you just received.
Oh, that was received. That was not me interjecting on their lives at all. This was just who they were in the circumstances of...
Right. Well, I have to say, I absolutely love it, because we don't get representation of other mothers. We only get the mother-child bond, typically, or the refrigerator mother who is the source of all evil, or trauma, or what have you, for the kids. And to have someone who is just as human, whether they're a mother or not, who's just as, I don't even know what I want to say, but like that representation, to see go from generation to generation, I just kind of rejoiced in it. And I said, any more representation of that? Because, you know, mothering comes in all different forms. It's not just, you know, straight mother-child, you know, and that reaffirming of we must nurture one another. You know, that is the answer to nurture one another. And it's not parent and child, it's human and human. Yeah, that was brilliant to me and very powerful. So thank you for that.
So
And like I said, you don't get very much representation of it. It was nice to see that. You know?
Well, apparently they had something to say on that. There you go.
Did anybody else have any dreams about this? I don't have a lot of dreams, or at least I don't remember my dreams. But I did wake up once and remember a dream in which I had a telebell. Telebells were in there.
Wow.
And then, of course, whenever I wake up and remember dreams, they just drift away, and I very rarely remember. So I don't remember anything about the dream except I woke up and was like, wow, I had a telebell. and I didn't know. I actually emailed Ronlyn, I think, and told her.
Yeah, I remember that.
And she said that later on, I guess when I get to the third book is when I really get the dreams, which I don't remember having any from that one. But I do, or something.
I had other people tell me that they were dreaming a lot when they read the third book.
Yeah. Just following
that was just so funny because
in the journey.
The plague caused them that.
Right.
It stirs up a lot of stuff, that third book.
Oh yeah.
It definitely stirs you up.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm living in a house with 2 other people, and I kept coming out of the book, like if I would read a little bit at night and then like come back into the house with these other 2 people who were not reading the book, you know, I was just like, y'all don't even know. I don't even know. I was just like, I'm just in this place right now, and okay, real world, what? How was your day? You know, like, what do I say to these people? Oh yeah, how was your day? What's up? You know, because I would be really in it, especially that third one.
Yeah, and the feeling when you finished that third book, and you just sat there and let it wash over you, like it was.
You felt separate. You felt separate. Like, do I even belong in this reality anymore?
Back out into the world tomorrow.
And I had adjustment, jet lag.
Yeah, I remember finishing it and just sitting there and being like,
not sure what's next. Yeah, like,
what
I don't know
do I
what's
do
next
now?
in my life right now. Yeah.
Nothing's the same anymore.
So I know I came late and I don't know what you covered before.
Please feel free to bring up whatever you want to.
So you were talking kind of about the process, and that you received most of it. So, like, we were talking about when we close it and have a hard time transitioning back into the real world. Like, I can't imagine writing it and having to make that transition. And do the characters still talk to you? You know what I'm saying? Like, do you, or once it's finally told, are they quiet? Like,
Once they were done, I was done writing. They went quiet. That had a lot to do with me
saying enough.
We're done. I've been through enough. So that difficulty of reintegrating into the world, that's 10 years of my life. Like, I did not
You
function.
constantly coming in and out like that.
Yeah.
And not well, because most of the time I was split. Like, even if I was interacting with someone in this
that's so
realm, there was always a piece of me somewhere else, or a piece of me being called or drawn, or my attention being co-opted, because the way I describe it is they didn't come to me, they came through me, so, which is a very different
thing
experience, because Mercy of Thin Air came to me, these 3 books came through me, which robbed me of agency, which is not a fun place to be at all. So that sort of having a hard time adjusting happened a lot. But it doesn't happen anymore because I'm done. But they'll come, like I can sense them, and like you'll see me point, because they actually have positions behind me, except for Harmon and the Dragon. The Harmon and the Dragon are always in front of me, but the rest of them are always behind me. and very specific.
Is it split by gender? Do you like have a male side and a female side?
Light, Fumini, Nicholas. Aoife, secret moves, like that. Zavet, Bryn. He's kind of in the background. They have very distinct positions.
Is there one that's the most demanding or the loudest and you gotta shut them up?
Fumini has transformed. I expected him to be really present right now, but he's been very quiet.
Huh.
Also, his arc as a character was.
And that was all. Yeah, that was a trial by fire.
So you hear them? It's fascinating.
Each one of them has a very distinct energy. Some of them are more directly vocal than others. Like when I said Zavet, she only said a few words to me directly, and I mean that literally. The rest of her story I got in pieces or impressions, and some of the other ones are like that too. Fumini would come just, his voice is very clear. Like that was just not even me trying to craft the damn thing. It's just straight out of his mouth and right on the page.
Do they have accents? And I'm not trying to be flippant. I'm just trying to understand the world because you created this other
but
world.
it's like I don't experience them. I mean, I know that they do, but I don't experience them. Like, I couldn't tell you definitively it sounds like such and such. I mean, I think there might be a slight British Isles lilt to it.
Because, I mean, this is a fantasy world. I don't know how they speak, what kind of, weird
Yeah,
accent
and then there's
they
some
have.
sort of, for Aoife and Light, because they did speak a different language. I don't know how to explain how that came. I mean, it was apparently some sort of translator between the dimensions or something that once it gets to me, I'm hearing.
So did they didn't speak to you in that weird language where you...
Not well.
Where you would hear something
I
you couldn't
probably had
understand it?
moments where I was hearing things that I didn't understand, and then something.
It's like the TARDIS; it just translates.
Had you ever experienced that in your younger life before?
To my recollection, no. But when I went back to look at things that I had done when I was younger, and again, this was for a presentation I was going to do, I started to notice points when there were these ruptures, and I didn't know at the time what they were. But I can look back now and go, oh, that's what was happening, and it didn't freak me out because it wasn't frightening at the time. It wouldn't happen frequently. The Mercy of Thin Air, it was the same process, it just wasn't violent.
So when it happened, were you able to put something down, or...
When I was younger, I mean, it was always in the context of a story. And yeah, I was able to write it. I mean, there's a piece for a novel that I started when I was in high school that I went back to a few years ago, and I was like, clearly that's not anything related to anything I know about personally. It's not related to the voice of the story that was being written. It's just this completely different. It was weird to find that. I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, it's like
what was happening?
I imagine Tolkien felt like that because just reading his, like, he literally invented languages, and I can't imagine what that was like in his head or yours.
And there was a really scary moment when I thought they were going to make me come up with one. I'm like, I'm not doing this for you. I'm not coming up with your alphabet. Like, no.
Yeah, just the world that exists just in your head. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that's how it actually all got started. Like he was inspired to.
Well, I mean,
create
he
Elfin,
himself knew.
and then he had to come up with the backstory as to why there's this language and why is it the way it is.
Well, I mean, he himself spoke dozens of languages.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But I mean, that whole world started as a bedtime story for his son with The Hobbit.
Yeah.
And the only reason he wrote it down is because Christopher kept correcting him. So he started writing details down. Because Christopher, I mean, there's a funny little excerpt that Christopher will write in little, because he'll write forwards and the stuff that was printed after Tolkien died and things like that. I think it was an anniversary edition of The Hobbit, where he talked about the only reason his dad wrote it down was because he was like, well, last time you said the door was blue, but now it's green. And Tolkien literally said, damn the boy, and started writing it down. Like, I mean, just the massive, and I mean, even when you're reading it, you know, I always get so into it, you see the world, you know? But just having to, like, pull that and then write it down instead of, like, the reverse, I can't imagine.
That's what I was gonna. Yeah, like they were like intentionally visual. Like I'll visualize as I'm reading.
What are intentionally visual?
These 3 books.
Oh yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
Even Tolkien, I didn't like visualize the world as much as I did. Like I have very strong ideas as to I can see their faces.
Yeah.
Could you like see their faces? Do you?
Some of them, and that's kind of a weird function of, even with my first novel, that I don't necessarily always have a really clear picture of what they look like, but I always have a very clear picture of the world itself. So I don't know what accounts for that kind of a blur with some of them, but like as you're talking, like I can remember very vividly what that particular moment in that particular scene looks like. Like it's basically like having a movie in my head.
Yeah.
Just being reminded of different sections.
Experience it the reverse way.
I can re-visualize it as y'all are talking.
So it's
about
like it's like this slipping. Like I even remember when I saw the whole town, like it was just this sort of, I'm here, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wow, okay, this is what it looks like. This is what it sounds like.
And I didn't even realize people had trouble with the first book. Cause
huge.
I didn't realize that because I just saw it as a movie. Like I was just so into it that.
Yeah, I don't.
It was just the world sitting in front of me.
Yeah,
you know.
And I had that same experience, like maybe first page or 2.
See, I didn't have that at all.
Yeah, I mean,
I just
maybe. I mean, it dissolved immediately if I did have a response to it. But then, like passing it on to my partner's mom, she's like, "What is with the weird coming at you thing?" And I was like,
I didn't even notice at all.
Gotta just do it. It's
I
worth
didn't
it.
notice because I guess I was so into it that it just
it didn't.
Yeah, normally I hate second person point of view. Normally I can't read it, like, because it's just something about it, unless it's done a very certain way.
Right.
Something about it makes me feel separate from the piece. And I mean, within the first paragraph I was in.
And
I was like, how'd she do
pulled
that?
me in more, I think.
Yeah.
Did you read the books afterwards?
No.
Okay, I guess it depends on how do you mean read. I had to do the copy edits and then do 2 rounds of page proofs, but that's really just to make sure that the manuscript is ready to go to publication. Have I read it since they were in print? No.
Let's talk cover and the book design itself. Did you work with the person who came up with the image?
No, Anna was great. Anna was the book designer at my publisher who did my first novel. She did all of them, clearly. And no, like, The Mercy of Thin Air went through 3 different incarnations, so the one that's on the cover right now is the last one. The map makers wore, I literally got a cover. What do you think? I'm like, that's freaking awesome.
Right.
Anna did a great job. And so, just based on that format, each one.
Did you pick the pages, though?
No, that was a super duper wonderful treat that they did decollage for the first book.
I mean, not only the texture of it, but like the side.
Oh, I know.
I'm one of those
it's
people
like,
like I'll
perfect.
go
That
and like
book.
smell books. And it was just the feeling. Like that's why I don't like Kindles because like I mean just.
They didn't deckle the other ones.
The third one isn't. I got them all hardcover.
Yeah, they were
The other
saving
2,
money on the last
and
one.
I also this was in one of them.
Yeah.
Did any of you guys see these?
Yeah, I got the
So
sword.
awesome. So I just was keeping.
I
this
think
as
I had
bookmark, and it was in
a deer.
Yeah,
the book when I got it.
Did Anna? Her name's Anna. Who?
Anna Dorfman.
Did she like talk about it or explain it or?
Book designers are expected to read the whole book, but at least a bit of the book to get a sense of the feel and to come up with some sort of imagery for it. And I think she probably read the whole book, and this is
These
what
are the
came out of
images
it.
that she
So
chose.
I'm gonna do that just so I can read books before they come out.
Yeah.
And then
Book designer.
Catherine did the little block prints for the first book, but did you use the same prints? For
Yeah, so that was intentional because the way I thought about the way because I knew that I wanted some sort of graphic element to it. So Mapmakers has all of they're technically lino cuts, but all of the woodcuts. And then in Chronicles of Secret Riven and Plague Diaries, if you go to those same spots where you see the images, you can go to Mapmakers because it's referencing that piece. So it's sort of like a little visual portal back in time. So
But you'd
whenever
have to flip through the book to find
you'd
it.
have to flip through the book to
I
find
mean,
it.
I love that idea of like reading these 2 and
can't just click
3
on the mouse.
again. And
No,
having
although they
Mapmakers
told me
more
that they were
on
going to
the
do
side.
that, but they
for
didn't.
the ebooks.
Hyperlinks,
Oh,
yeah,
I
but they
see.
didn't do it.
Oh.
Okay. No, I don't do ebooks anyway. I was kidding
Yeah.
with the mouse, but
Yeah. No.
but yeah, you would want a hyperlink.
That's what, and I had talked to them about that when Mapmakers came out, and then after that,
The compass rose.
yeah, that was the book designer's choice to do that. I was like, yes. I mean, that's when you have a good team when they're coming up with these like little tiny details that just make such a big difference.
Yeah.
Just to go back to kind of what you were saying about the times and everything. To me, this kind of was a flashback. I don't read a lot of books. I'll read science books or history books or mostly books about the history of science. So I don't read a lot of fiction, but I did read, like with my daughter and everything, I did read like the Harry Potter series and the Percy Jackson series. And so I have read a couple things, and so I waited till all these were done to read them. But as I was reading Harry Potter, I think it was the 5th book. It was in 2003 when it first came out that I was reading it. I don't know if anybody's read Harry Potter or anything, but that was at the time with the political situation. We had just invaded Iraq, and there was just all the lies that were being rained down upon us by the government were just like all the lies being rained down by the Ministry of Magic. So there was a very strong connection with the book I was reading, and Right and Wrong, which were so obvious to anybody reading it. And then you say, well, this is exactly what's going on right now. And then, of course, I'm reading these earlier this year, and then I'm seeing a lot of parallels with
Yeah, it's
with the
funny how
government
it was
we've-
written so long ago.
we've got right now. And it was just that it was a weird feeling that I hadn't felt in literally 15 years. And maybe if I read books more often, I would.
It's also,
It would happen,
I found a
but-
similar connection with The Handmaid's Tale, where it was written,
Yeah, that was a weird time
so
for that
long
to
ago.
come back out.
but now it's so
So
relevant.
History spiral. She was talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Barbara Marx Hubbard talks about it like that too, that it's a spiral, but it's like a slinky spiral where we do come back around, but we are in a little bit of a
It's a little bit
higher
different.
place. Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's spiraling up. That it does come around, but it's not a circle. It's a spiral that at least is moving upward. I mean, people are writing their side of what's going on right now, and books are being published like right now, speaking out against the president, who's president right now. It's like that's just crushing my regular history brain. Like these stories
there's no
aren't coming
delay.
out 20 years later; they're coming out now.
Yeah.
Like you can write a book and get it published so rapidly now that it's like we're gonna see a lot of different points of view. The victor can't have a monopoly on what gets written about his time in history. Can't. Everybody's opinion is out there.
Like one of the things I was very conscious of as I was working on the books was that they were attempting to provide a mechanism of evolution, and I don't know if they timed themselves very well. I don't know if it's possible that there's a leap, because the plague was the leap.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And sometimes these things just seem to come through because you're ready. Like it's not necessarily their timing in this. Because I've had that portal situation too, where there's just like people lined up behind us right now, waiting to come through, as you've said, different than come to you. That it's because we're ready, kind of, because we are in these places now where we can talk about mental differentials, and we can talk about trauma and carrying trauma, and all of these closets are being opened, and all this darkness is getting aired out with light a little bit. And so it would have been lovely for these stories to come 20, 50, 80 years ago, and it would be great if they come in another 30, 50 years, whatever, but because we're ready, we've surrounded us with people that we can talk to about this type of shit that aren't going to shove salt in our mouths or try to hang us or exile us from society. That we've created all together, all of us have created at least a little more safe and available surroundings for ourselves to have this shit come through. And there's 100 people behind us, all of us, I think, waiting to come through and air out their grievances and get that healing that pain looked at, and then the healing coming through, only because we're ready. The timing on it can't be any other time. So whether it's the most effective that it could be coming through at this time, I mean, I've had that question too, I think. Why now? But I think that's why. Because the door is open. Kind of.
Similar situations are happening all around the world. Authority taking over for anybody and everybody else, stealing votes, doing all kinds of stuff. It's happening in Turkey, it's happening in Afghanistan, it's happening in India. Similar things are happening in China, Korea. So it's a world's problem. Humanity is waking up.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people are finding their voice more than they used to. Especially, I guess in my generation, the force we have to all go out and try to make a difference, and in what little way we can, everyone, I don't know, votes, we volunteer, right. I feel like that it's very different in that way.
Tina brought up an interesting point of these characters going through you might be healing for them,
Oh, they used me to embody their trauma.
Absolutely.
I processed
that's
their
what I'm talking
trauma.
about. It's not a pretty sweet thing. It's a fucking terrifying, scary proposition.
Right.
And you're like, hold on, I cannot do this.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
But they're probably healed now, or mostly healed.
Vindicated and heard.
Their voices are quieted.
That's kind of a fascinating idea of our healing continuing past our own physical selves.
Yeah.
And
we
can not
how are
only
you?
heal our physical selves, we can also heal our
Did you go
ancestors.
through some?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Exactly. Healing throughout or after?
And
That's a hard
healing
question to
that
answer, actually.
creates a different foundation for your energetic,
future
Right.
you will.
So we inherit
Inherit
their
all the
trauma
trauma.
through our DNA, but we're also a conduit of healing for their trauma, which in turn heals us because we've inherited their trauma.
Time travel paradox stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
But we don't necessarily heal it when we inherit it.
No.
We have to go
Right,
back.
no, but processing it, right.
Yeah, we have to go back and heal it. That's
Yeah.
another process.
I mean, just thinking about people and why they are. When you first encounter people, whether it's your parents or just anybody else, when you get them at face value, like first impressions, you can't possibly even wrap your mind around why they are.
Yeah.
And so giving yourself that space and giving them that space to say, and like when you think about how when people getting elected everywhere in the world and being like, what the fuck? But then like giving yourself the time and space to look backward 10, 15 years to see what has been like bubbling up but underneath the surface, and then this person gets elected. And like being able to see your parents and your grandparents for what had happened to them, where they were when they were kids, all of that, just any of that, like, right on smack anger or fear or frustration with them or whatever, it just dissolves, or at least it gets softer when you're thinking about what they went through, because when you're first regarding Zavit, you're like, what the fuck is her problem, man, damn, and then you're like, oh, yeah,
oh, that's a problem,
yeah, that's fucked up, okay, and then giving that grace to anyone that you encounter.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of work. It's tiring. But it is a less tiring way to experience the world, because everything isn't like smacking you in the face, and you're not wasting any energy on being like, why are you fucked up? You're like, wait, let me see if I can picture what your childhood was like real quick. Okay, got it. You're just having a normal response to a fucked up situation. Got it. Makes it much easier to deal with it all. I think the most striking thing just overall that will probably carry with me the strongest from reading these books is how I think I even maybe have more confidence in myself relaying either to my clients or to people feelings, the way that things feel. Not like emotional feelings, but that knot that she had between her belly button and her throat, like just visceral things like that.
The tongue feeling tied.
And I think I've been pretty good being able to explain things like that, or being able to feel them in people and say, does this feel like this? Or asking questions like, when you feel that feeling in your stomach, does it feel soft or heavy or fuzzy or dense? Or, like asking those kind of like qualifying questions. I feel like the one big overarch of the whole trilogy is being able to have even more like ground to root those kind of ideas in, because there's just so much of that, how people are feeling physically, not emotionally, but physically in their bodies, how things are feeling. Heavy, dark, bruised, sharp, acidic, like all of those things. It's just so, reading it and getting through it and rereading it, I'm looking forward to rereading it.
I tell you one thing that popped out to me on my second reading is because, and this is strictly because the difference between who I was before I read the books the first time and who I was when I reread them the second time. The chakra centers. Like, I started to realize the chakra centers were lined up with each person's, feeling or disability or, that kind of thing. The third eye and the throat chakra and, things like that. And that just fascinated me. And I knew that had to be subconscious. Like, that was just something that just organically grew. Yeah, it felt that way. And that was just really cool when I kind of spotted it. That,
I think for me, one of the big takeaways was like the way that and it's been a while because I read them when they come out, not reread, and I thought I was going to, but no, I barely made it. But when the community, when she goes to stay with the guardians, and the way that they process, and the way they have someone witness their emotion, and the way they're able to just acknowledge things and let it go, because I did yoga for like a year, college, I've never like done a lot of meditation, but in my own, I identify with a lot of that, and I guess I just work it out in my own head some kind of way, without like a full practice. And so when I read this, it just even furthered that for me. And then another colleague of ours that worked with us last year, she just has a really strong voice and just a really strong presence, and I love her. She's like life of the party, but she's just real in your face, And so we work with kids, and we work in a Montessori environment, and so it's the environment, and it should be, the adults stand back and the kids take the lead, you know what I mean? And so it wasn't real. And she would say to me all the time in school, she would say, "You're so calm, and I wish I I wish I could be like that. How are you always so calm? And I don't think I'm calm inside. Like, I'm not calm when you're doing that. I'm not calm. You know what I mean? In my mind to the kids. But it wasn't until, I think, until you posted that you were going to have this, or I don't remember how long ago that was, that I remembered it all. And I said, hey, you need to read these books. Because I felt like I couldn't explain it to her. But I feel like maybe she could, in some kind of way. 'Cause she's a big reader. Like, we bond over books. That's how we met, at the library, you know? And so I thought, well, maybe that.
No, I've definitely done that before. Like when I'm explaining something to an older child or something, and I need a metaphor to get them to understand. Sometimes I'll think, you know that story I told you about, where and I'll start pulling metaphors from the experiences that were described in the book, because again they're universal. And so it helps to have a framework to describe them by,
Something that was deeply moving for me in the first book was the birth scene. I was just so amazed by that. And also the whole, what it was called, but when the witnessing of the trauma.
Yes. Yeah. That's.
I know you said that didn't make you cry the first time.
Right, but the second time, whoa. Yeah.
And it's almost like you're releasing energy by reading it.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. And using words like witness and things, that's what I've drawn from it, so that other people can understand what I mean, because it's just so hard to find a word to hang it on, to hang these concepts on.
Right. Yeah, and speaking of that too, just the word guardian is so much more of a simple definition of what they're doing, but just within the word guardian is such like power and importance, and I don't know, it's like it somehow manages to be larger than like protector even, or sentinel, like there's so many other words that have a different just a different vibe to them, but guardian is so right on and so simple and so strong. And yeah, there's just singular words like that, a lot of them in this for me were really like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot that word, and it's so
poignant.
Yeah, it's just the right word.
I go back and read.
I'm mad that I'm not home right now, because I want to read them tonight. I really do, and I totally would.
I highly recommend reading The Mapmakers War Last,
Yeah,
or even first and
I want
last.
to try it. I really do.
Well, and because I read The Mapmakers War, so then when the second one came out, I was like, okay, I wanted to see my friends again, start reading. And so I was reading with such a rush, okay, yeah, this is good, yeah, this is good, where is she? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, I like you too, you're fine. But where's all the other characters? And so then it took me like a while to be like, okay, you just read this book? Just stop. And then when the second one ended, and I immediately called my sister. She was the one that gave me her very first book. And I called her because I had read it first. And I was like, it's not finished. They very clearly chopped something in half. And I'm really mad because it just came out. And so I was like, just don't even read it. Then I waited for this one, and again rushed. And so when I get something really suspenseful, or something that I just really want to gobble, like you said earlier, gobble up, I sometimes have to go to the end and read it so that I can enjoy my experience. I'm not like those people that are like, don't tell me the end. No. Tell me what happened, so now we can enjoy our conversation.
I like the journey. I like that journey, though.
Yeah.
Of not knowing what's going to happen.
Because she's leading you through a certain path, so I want to take that path. There's a reason why.
Yeah.
There's a reason why the things are being
appreciate that,
revealed
though.
to you.
I do too. I get both points of view. I do.
Me too.
I read the ending.
That's why I have to go back because I couldn't get it all.
Focus.
In the third book, I read the end, and I was like, wait a minute, what is this? What is secret? Who is writing this? I had to go back and read it like 4 times, and then, oh, this is the daughter.
Yeah.
And like, oh, but I want to know more. What happened? Yeah, I was stuck in there.
So how are you doing, Ronlyn? Are you healed? I know that writing this and dealing with it was very stressful.
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting better? Is it as time goes?
Yeah.
The people back there are receding somewhat, or is it?
They're keeping their distance. There's really nothing left to do. I mean, the books are done. They're out. It's completely out of my hands. So,
What's it like hearing us talk about them? Does it feel like your stories?
it's helpful. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this was not only to sort of have some sort of way to close out that 12 years from when I started it to now, but did anyone see the Netflix performance by Hannah Gadsby?
Oh wow! Yeah,
Nanette.
super powerful.
Okay.
Nanette.
All right.
Amazing.
It's a comedy performance,
But it's not. Because it gets deep and you're like crying and you're like, what happened here?
Yes. It's called Nanette. You'll
Amazing.
find out why it's called Nanette when you watch it. But I think it's still on. Yeah. It's incredible. So I
Because you're
watched.
laughing.
Tell me the end.
You're laughing.
It won't make it better for me.
But like
No,
you're
I'm not gonna tell you
laughing, you're laughing, and then all of a sudden it gets deep, and
Yes.
you're like, "Oh my god!" But then you're laughing again, but then it's still deep, and you're just like, oh, "Yeah."
So I saw it the night it came out. And I don't usually do things like that. I'm a late adopter.
I saw it before I heard it because people started talking about it after I had seen it, and it was funny how much. Because I saw like articles about it,
So
and like
one
it was
thing, it's not a.
It's a
It's
it's
a- oh, no,
a
it's-
stand-up
it's a
comedy
special.
performance.
One
it's,
hour.
like
Okay.
it's a special. Yeah.
And it's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. And it's amazing. You've never seen anything like it.
Amazing.
But there's a part, I'm not really ruining anything by saying this. There's a part in it where she tells the audience, I need you to help me take care of my story. And I need you to help me take care of my story. That's really what it comes down to. Because I carried this.
She's like, you thought you were coming to the comedy special,
Yeah,
but this
but
is
you're
what
not.
it's going to be now.
She's
Australian.
Tasmanian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But these characters might be your guardians.
I don't think she'd agree with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree either. I can feel the.
I feel more like their past lives and other dimensions, or
There's a lot of cross current.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What have you done about it?
I sit with it. I live with it.
Have you done any other work?
Yeah, but nothing quite settles it. And that may be something I live with. That is the price I had to pay to do this.
Yeah.
And I have to accept it.
I almost want you to write a story now of your
What it's like.
right, like of an author who goes through trauma, writing a story that must be written, and then is basically like the soldier who comes home and he's not the same person.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it's
'cause,
definitely
I mean,
happened to
after
actors
reading it-
before, right? I mean, actors have gone through.
Well, I remember
Parts,
reading an article about Heath Ledger after he died. This was when I was in North Carolina working on the end part of Mapmaker simultaneous with starting Chronicle. And there was an article, a magazine that was just in the place where I was staying, and I read the whole thing, and I was like, yeah, I know exactly what happened to him. I'm just not dead yet.
Right.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you've got that support system. I mean, a lot of the time, that's all that's standing between us and ending up that way is the support system and people around you that you can talk to that are not going to hurt you because of what you're saying.
But I definitely feel like I came out of the trilogy like a different person and a better person. But and not only that, but viewed the world differently. And so like I said, that's one of the reasons I wanted to come here is so you could understand how much it meant.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also just to hear other people's, experience of it.
Yeah.
Like, did it just touch me so deeply because I'm already a little touched? Did other people have this experience too?
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Really appreciate everybody coming. Really appreciate
too.
you
Yes.
calling it. Like,
Thank you.
I
Thank
love
you
it
all
that
for
it was
being
like
here.
impetus for some of us to like power read it or read it again or whatever. Like, oh, this is coming.
I put it out there to a lot of my friends that I'd never. Not when something means a lot to me, a book. This only happened with these three and one other. I don't share it. It's almost like I don't want to talk about it with anybody else because I'm gonna be real upset if you say something I don't like.
Right.
I feel safe here because we all can.
Right.
Yeah.
But just putting it out there.
But I do
And
get
so-
very protective.
Yeah,
Oh,
and so
100%.
When I was in a book club, which I'm not anymore, but when I was in a book club, I never would recommend that other book because I didn't want to talk about it with all of you. I didn't want to hear your opinions about it. I didn't need to. And so my sister nominated me on that one of those Facebook things where you post 7 books in 7 days, no comments that really affected you or whatever. And I felt obligated, being a librarian. I should do this. I don't do any of that Facebook stuff. Oh, I should do this. And I text her, I'll do it in a few weeks because I'm really busy right now. And then I couldn't do it. I just told you why. And because I didn't have 7. Like, for me to really, I recommend books a lot. Like, you tell me what you like, and I can tell you some things that you'll probably like to read. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for me to really, like, recommend anything, a lot of times I feel like it has to be, like I say a lot, like I'll say, okay, this will change your life.
Yeah.
You know, and it has to be something that's like, this will change your life, or I'm not going to really say, I loved it. You know, and it's only been this trilogy, one other book.
Yeah. It sometimes I have trouble voicing like how much something affected me.
Because it makes you vulnerable. And you just want to protect it. You just want to say, you know, this means so much. I don't want to show it.
Let me ask, can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
You came and talked at LSU after Mercy of Thin Air came to faculty club meetings?
Yes, it was a very long time ago.
Yes, it was. And I was like the one in the audience that had all the questions because I had read them. And then you had mentioned afterwards that you were working on something else at the time, and then you had to set it aside. Was that
This is the thing that got in the place of the thing I set aside.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because what I thought I was going to write about was based on, and that's another theme in my thing. I have these short stories and then they become something else. So I thought the next book was going to be about Vietnam War and ecology and urban planning and stuff like this. Like I just kind of had this little cluster of things that I was interested in, and based on the short story I had written, and it just would not get off the ground, period. It just would not take. And then you may not have been here when I said, if you go on my website, there's a timeline for the trilogy.
Okay.
So like if you go to any of the books, if you scan from like the title of the book and go a little bit down, there's a link to the timeline. And that gets into what happened. Because that just, it didn't want to be a book. Whatever that this is what was coming.
Right.
I feel like it would
how
be
did I not
very
know?
interesting if you made like, I don't know, not even a book, but just about your process.
An
It's
essay.
Yeah.
I think that would be fascinating.
I mean, it's so foreign to me, just because, but it's not, I mean, not to you, obviously, but, like, the way you talk about it
Yeah.
is just
What's crazy to me was
amazing.
when you first started working on it, we had just met.
Yes.
And so we would have kind of vague discussions about it because you weren't ready to talk about it.
Right.
And I had just started my medical physical awakening. Like that was at the point that the seed had just sprouted. And I didn't get what you were talking about. And now I'm 100%. I'm like, yep, I'm with her. I'm following her. I know exactly what she's talking about.
Yeah.
She described it perfectly. And it just cracks me up because it's not like you shared all this with me and then I experienced it. It was like you were going through it and I'm going through something. You know, we'll talk about it eventually, but I'm going through something. And then I went through it, and then you know, basically while you were ahead of me, and then we got back together, and it was like, yeah, now I know why I met you.
And then being able to have the language to explain it.
Yeah.
Because 7 years ago, I don't think I would have had the language to explain it.
Right.
But now I know, and now I don't even care. I mean, I don't. It's like, if you think I'm insane, that's okay, but this was completely my experience, and I experienced things in a non-ordinary way.
which I think is just so
but,
cool.
But I think you experience things the way we do as children and then forget. Because
Possibly, yeah.
once we started having discussions, memories start popping up, and I start going, "Oh yeah, I did do that." I did have an entire imaginary little people village living in my bathroom's wallpaper. That is true, and
May's bathroom. She still has the same wallpaper.
And
So I know what she's
go back
talking
and
about.
visit.
I gotta know what she's talking about.
Wow.
Actually, it's fascinating.
Yeah, and so you start to realize all these experiences that felt childish were actually
Brain processing something.
well, it was actually this, but we didn't know what this was,
Right.
so we didn't recognize it, and we forgot about it because the world told us put all
That's
that
not
childish
real.
stuff away.
Yeah.
But me just not being a writer is just your whole process, and the way you talk about it is fascinating. But that's just me.
Well, I am actually surprised how often people are interested in the creative process. Like, that surprises me.
Yeah,
We
I'm just
don't do it.
creative in different ways, I
Yeah.
think. And so, like I said, how I spoke about Tolkien, like, the idea of having a whole separate world in your head and then, like, just coming to you.
Yeah, it's a lot
Awesome.
to carry.
Yeah.
A lot more space up there than you think. I can assure you. All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, you know how to get in touch with me.
Yeah.